that was required to be paid so that we may be reunited with you. Thank you, God. We love you in Christ's name. Amen. Please be seated. Children are dismissed at this time.
Good job. Way to go. Yeah. Well, it is a privilege to welcome you here this morning, and thank you for choosing to come and be a part of Stonesville Community Church today. I know it's Super Bowl Sunday. It's a big Sunday for lots of festivities for everybody, and just hope that you have a great day with your family and your friends as you gather together. I'm going to say calories don't count on Super Bowl Sunday, so wouldn't that be great if that was true? It'd be awesome. I have a friend here who's on a point plan, so he gets like 30 or 31 points per day. I guess food and calories reduced to points. And he said a Whopper was 21 points. 21 points. And he's got a 30 or 31 point day. I mean, that's your day right there. Okay, I ate my Whopper. That's good. I guess I'm good. So, but anyway, it's pretty crazy out there. Enjoy your food, okay? Enjoy it. Praise God for it. All those good and tasty things that you get to be a part of and have. Praise God for that. And don't forget, it's just games beside the point, right? You get to be together, and that's a good thing, a real good thing. So I hope you enjoy the day, and we're really glad you chose to come and be a part of our day. And there's some chili for you after church today. After we're done with our morning service, you can head back and have some chili, and the elders have done a good job. And maybe at the end of it, maybe we should take some Gatorade and dump it on the elders' heads. What about that? Yeah, just dump it on their head for all the victory. They got us a victory, right? And so thank you so much for the work, and we appreciate them and all the different things. So we're in a series called The Life of David, and it's a pretty powerful series in a lot of ways. And so God's been working on our hearts and guiding us in this process, and we're very, very thankful. I want to welcome all the live streamers as well, and thank you for joining in today, and we hope you enjoy the journey here in the life of David. But this morning, in the interest of time, and we have a busy day ahead of us, I really want to streamline what I want to say to you today. I want to emphasize three important words, all right? Three important words. These three important words are sovereignty, suffering, and servanthood. All right? Sovereignty, suffering, and servanthood. Okay? So you're going to face people in your life. You're going to face King Sauls in your life. People who are antagonistic toward maybe how you're wanting to live your life or doing the things that you feel like you should do, and there's going to be people antagonistic toward that. All right? You're going to face people who are not for you. You're going to face situations maybe even that would really, maybe you want to get even, or you want to draw revenge, or what's the famous cliche or the famous phrase? Don't get mad, get even. That's exactly right. And so we have these kinds of relationships, unfortunate situations that we're in from time to time. And so what's going to be the principles? What are the principles that guide us in those seasons of life? Guide us in those difficult relationships. What is it that would guide us, that would cause us to do the right thing given a given set of circumstances? See, everything that happens in our lives, we have this little mental exercise going on. And that mental exercise is this an opportunity by God, or is it a temptation, a very cleverly disguised and camouflaged temptation in my life? Okay? So you're going to face situations like that. And we're going to see David in a situation today where he is looking at a situation, and it's really, really interesting what situation he finds himself in 1 Samuel chapter 24, verses 1 through 22. And he has some people around him that are saying, hey, David, this is an opportunity. This is powerful. Who would have thought that these circumstances and these details would come together in just this way? This has to be a God. David, you better take this situation. Do not let this opportunity pass without you doing something powerful and something that just would be life-changing for you and for the nation of Israel. You're going to see it in just a second. And then you got another thought, and that is that maybe this is not a great opportunity to take a step up the ladder, but maybe this is a temptation that's cleverly designed by someone else or something else that is not going to take me a step up the ladder, and in fact, it's going to be a slide in my life. It's a temptation for me to go down a path that I should not go down. Hey, when your kids were younger, anybody here ever play the game Chutes and Ladders? Anybody? We got some of you out there. Yes. Okay, good. Chutes and Ladders. This is an awesome game. And I think it's slide 19, if you would, for me. Okay, does this look remotely familiar to the Chutes and Ladders crowd? Okay, this was great because, when I was younger, I didn't have, PlayStations and Nintendos and stuff like that. And Xboxes, I don't even know what the consoles are anymore. But I didn't have that. In fact, we played tic-tac-toe. That's about my level. Draw the pound sign, and then here we go, And that's what I did for entertainment at church, okay, or other boring holidays, right? All right, but when our kids would get tired of the video games and whatever, occasionally we would have a board game. I'm not a big board game guy, but this was one of the board games that would make its way to our holiday table. It was Chutes and Ladders. You know how it goes. There's 100 boxes. The boxes are numbered 1 through 100, and there's 10 blocks or squares per row. There's 10 rows, 10 times 10, 100 boxes. And depending, you roll the die or you flip the spinner, right? And wherever that spinner lands or whatever the die you roll, then that's the number of places that you get to move. And if you're fortunate enough to land on a ladder, then you get to climb ahead that many spaces. And so the goal is to get to 100 before anybody else gets to 100. And so it's Chutes and Ladders. Now, also in the game, you have chutes, C-H-U-T-E-S, chutes. Okay, and if you happen to land on a chute square, you would slide all the way back, maybe not all the way back to the beginning, but all the way back early on down. Even if you were at block 50 or 75, you could potentially, you see the center chute there, you could slide down all the way down to about number 24 when you were sitting at 82. Isn't that crazy? Chutes and Ladders. Okay? And so what really makes this game interesting is you don't have to be smart to win. You don't even have to be older to win. You could be a 5-year-old and flip that spinner and make those moves and things, and you get lucky and you hit all the ladders, man, you're the winner. You're 5 years old and you beat everybody, and they're 30 and 40. That's crazy, but that's exactly how the game goes. It's kind of a game of chance. All right? Well, here's the deal. David had a lot of chutes early in his life. Okay? He had some ladders, but he had more chutes than ladders. Okay? And sometimes life is like that. What looks like a ladder, and you want to get on that square because it's going to take you to where you think you want to go. Okay? So he had some ladders like that in his life. And he's going to hit some of those, and we've already talked about some of them. But then you're going to have another perspective is that this potentially could not just be a ladder, it may be a chute in my life. And so I need the wisdom of God to give me insight on what am I looking at. Is this an opportunity to do great things? Does it fit into the overall plan of my life? Or is this something that is a temptation to get me sidetracked? And if it is, maybe it's going to serve as a chute, not a ladder. Okay? So when we look at David at this point in the story, we know that King Saul has attempted to have him murdered, or even twice he tried to actually execute him, assassinate David while he was in the royal palace. Saul took a spear and tried to spear him to the wall, skewer him to the wall in the palace. King Saul has been instrumental. He has been the primary reason why David's life is more like a chute than a ladder. And so David, he ended up losing his job. He was promised a wife for slaying Goliath. Saul was very hesitant to come through with that promise. And so David's having to do other things to earn the right to receive and to have Saul's daughter as his bride. David has lost his home. He has lost his counselor. He has lost access to his closest friend by the name of Jonathan, and we talked about him last week. And so there's no security. There's very little food. And from the looks of it, there's hardly any chance of anything really good ever happening in David's life as long as King Saul lives. And so that's where David is. King Saul is the primary reason why there's so many chutes, C-H-U-T-E-S, chutes in David's life. And David had some ladders, but he had more chutes than he had ladders. Well, what are you going to do when you see the guy that's been responsible for all the chutes, the perceived chutes in your life? He has an opportunity, or it could be a temptation. Only time will tell. And when we look at this in 1 Samuel chapter 24, okay, and you remember now, you're going to keep those three words in mind: sovereignty, suffering, and servanthood. Okay? This is what's going to guide you when you finally have a chance to even the score with the guy that's created so many chutes in your life. Okay? Those are three principles that regulate a young would-be king in the life of David. He's probably in his early to mid-20s when all of these chutes are being introduced in his life by a king who's come to hate him and be very jealous and angry with him. And so when we see this, we see there was some internal principles. I'm not so sure I could have done what David does here in 1 Samuel chapter 24, verses 1 through 22. It's like, God, what are the principles? What are the internal guidelines that I need when I'm given the perfect opportunity to even the score with someone in my life that I think's created all the chutes? What would you do? And do you have the internal makeup to hold you steady and to guide you through those kinds of situations as you work through opportunities or temptations, and you don't really know what they are, but time does reveal it. All right. So I think that's kind of gets us oriented here this morning, and then I want to talk to you about Annie Downs. I'll close with a story about Annie Downs. That's we talked a little about the Scripture, and then we look at some practical ways we can apply some of these things. I'll tell you about Annie Downs' chutes and ladder story. It's kind of interesting. But as we see on slide number 3, if you would for me, slide number 3, after Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So it's a freshwater oasis in the middle of a very dry and desert part of the Near East. It's near the desert of En-Gedi, would be west of the Dead Sea. I've seen that area. It's very chalky. But in this particular place, there are waterfalls, there's lush vegetation, there's countless caves in the rocky limestone cliffs high above the Dead Sea. If you would, let's break out to slide number 11, if you would, for me. Slide number 11, I think it's at the Dead Sea. It shows you there we go. This is the Dead Sea, and you're looking from west into this region or this general area that the text describes for us. Okay, En-Gedi is, go to the next slide. En-Gedi is tucked away in all of that chalkiness and all of that wilderness. En-Gedi is tucked away, and it's one of the most popular places for tourists as they go and they check it out. And so there's fresh water there. Go to the next slide. As you can see, it's very rugged terrain. It's not easily accessible. You've got some caves that are pockmarked in the side of the cliffs, and you can see kind of zooming in some of these caves and what they look like. And so it's a very intriguing place. And it's a place where David and the small group of people who are following him and with him, they have found this to be a refuge. And it's very interesting. The whole Israeli army is against David, and there's been 3,000 Israeli soldiers that have been handpicked for a special mission. Go assassinate this would-be king. Okay? And so David has hit a chute in his life. He's on the downslide. He's getting to a place he's discouraged. He's on the run. He has limited access and limited resources. He's being lied about. The king is misunderstanding who he is and what he's about. And so he's in a chute place in his life. He's sliding backwards. Saul, verse 2, if you would. Go back to slide number 3. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all of Israel, this elite fighting force, and he set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. Now, we don't know where that is precisely, but we have an idea. It's an unidentified rock outcropping near the Dead Sea in the general area I showed you here on the screen. But what I want you to see is it stresses the inaccessibility of the site. All right? It's hard to get to. Verse 3. Saul came to the sheep pens along the way. Sheep pens would be great camping spots where you can border in your sheep if you've got any of those with you. And it also made for impromptu camping spot, kind of a little flat area maybe in all this stuff. A little flat area where the sheep could be. And so there were sheep pens along the way, and there was a nearby cave. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Yes, that's in the Bible. You probably didn't know that, did you? You know the Bible is a real book. And it's very practical. And so Saul had to answer the call of nature. And unfortunately, there's no porta pots in the Near Eastern world at this particular time in 1010 BC, in this time in Israel. Okay? Now, if I were telling my kids this story and they were young, imagine little tow-headed Will and Levi, burr haircuts, little guys, they're antsy and fidgety around, at the family time and the family gathering. I would probably, if I were telling this story, would add a lot of very interesting sound effects right here. But since you're dignified and I'm more dignified now, I'm going to spare you the sound effects that I would have delighted in to snap those boys' attention back to where we were in family time, all right? I could have easily done that with some really, really choice sound effects about right here, okay? I think you're with me. For some reason, a little bathroom humor always got Levi and Will back. I don't know why, but it did. Okay, David and his men were far back in the cave. Now, you ever been out on a very bright sunlit day and then you step into something really dark? Can you see? You can't see very well, can you? You can see. Your eyes have to get adjusted. And so Saul's eyes are dulled by the desert sun, and so he can't see very well in the darkened cave. And verse 4 tells us the men said, now this is David's men, the men said, David, David. And I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating because I'm sure they're very quiet. This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to do with him as you wish. David, this is a ladder. This is what you've been waiting for. This guy has all these chutes in your life. You finally got the ladder you've been hoping for. And all the hands reach for the daggers. And then David crept up unnoticed, and he cut off the corner of Saul's robe. So as Saul gets into this cave, he quickly throws off his robe. Okay, he's going to answer the call of nature. He's going to do his business. And if he had too many prunes in a Middle Eastern diet, you never know. He might have been in a really big hurry. All right, a really big hurry. He throws that robe off to take care of things. And David creeps up to this guy. And talk about being vulnerable. Now imagine this. There's the guy that's kept you on the run for several years. He's responsible for about 95% of your headaches. At least he's perceived to be. Okay? He's literally tried to murder you twice and then orchestrate your murder 4 other times. Total 6 times he's tried to take your life out. He has made your life pure misery. Huh? And here he is in a cave. It's dark. All your buddies are with you. They got you back up. Saul, it wasn't proper to do your business within the camp of Israel. There are biblical guidelines for that. We won't get into that, but he couldn't do his business within the camp, so he had to leave the camp. He more than likely left his bodyguard behind. Here he is in a vulnerable position, literally, as we say, caught with his pants down. There he is. He has no bodyguard. He has no defense. He's in a very vulnerable position. He's unable to react, to respond. And David realizes in that moment, wow, is this an opportunity or is this a temptation? It looks like an opportunity, but at the same time, this is still the king of Israel. And I have a lot of respect for the Lord's anointed. This is not a Philistine. This is one of our own. Is this an opportunity? Is this a ladder? Or is this a chute? If I take this step, am I going to go plummet down in my life? Am I going to thwart God's plan in my life? Or am I going to step on the ladder and finally get to my destination? You see where he's at? In your life, 95% of it is understanding. Is this an opportunity or is this a temptation? And see, unless you understand that there's 3 guiding principles in your life that you're going to honor: the sovereignty of God. Here's my 3 words. The sovereignty of God, the role of suffering, the priority of servanthood. These are the 3 principles that regulated David's life. And this is why he was able to make a right decision when he was on the horns of a dilemma. Is this opportunity or is it a temptation? So after David was conscience-stricken for having cut off the corner of his robe, now that's a big deal. Is David bumming because he messed up Saul's hemline? Is that what he's conscience-stricken about? Daggone, I messed up a perfectly good-looking robe. Is that what he's concerned about? I don't think it is either. And this act was far from a meaningless act, because as you recall from last week's message, you will know that the robe of a monarch or a king or of a king-elect or of a prince who was someone in line to become a king, the robe was heavily laden with meaning and significance. And last week we learned that Jonathan gave his robe to David as a symbol of, I'm going to always support you and be loyal to you. Well, the robe had a symbolic meaning behind it. And when you tore your robe, when you cut a piece off of your robe, it was making a statement that your kingdom is not going to endure, that it's going to be ripped out of your hands. And I think that David realized that he had taken a step, and it was just a small one, but he had taken a step toward revenge and retaliation. He had taken a step, what looked like an opportunity. He was taking a step down that road, and then what he realized, what he did was, he did something very symbolic to make a statement to Saul without taking his life. But he realized that, you know what? I got really close. I was within a hair's breadth of slitting his throat instead of slitting the garment. That's where he was. And that's why he's conscience-stricken. It frightened him. And his men think he's done too little, and David thinks he's done too much. And verse 6 reads, he said to his men, the Lord forbid. And again, I'm thinking this is a conversation that they have amongst themselves quickly, perhaps even after the fact. But it's written as in this way, as it's happening simultaneous, this conversation is happening as this is all going down. And he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. He says it twice. With these words, David sharply rebuked his men, and he did not allow them to attack Saul. He dresses them down. They're saying, you are a fool, David. This is an opportunity, David. God's got to be in this, David. I mean, what are the odds? You are here tucked away inside this cave. And the guy that's trying to take your life with 3,000 specially chosen soldiers is now relieving himself and vulnerable in the very cave. This is an opportunity, David. Don't pass this opportunity. You're going to mess it up, man. You've got to do something right here. This has to be of God. David, you're a fool if you let him go. You imagine? Have you ever had peer pressure in your life where everybody around you is telling you you're an idiot if you do that? Or if you don't do it, you'd be an idiot. Hey, is there a lesson right here? Again, I'm going to bring you back to 3 words: sovereignty, suffering, and servanthood. And I want you to bear those in mind because I'm going to bring it in right there as we wrap this thing up in a little bit. Okay? You have to have something that guides you through those peer pressure situations in your life. And Saul left the cave and went his way. He walked down a ravine 700 yards away probably, and if you can imagine those craggy cliffs, and you can even be you could be probably a couple hundred yards away and echo your voice down through those ravines and canyons. And yet the terrain can be so rough that even if you made yourself known, people couldn't even get you if they wanted to because it's just so rough. And so David understands this, and Saul left the cave and he went his way. And then verse 8, we have one of the longest recorded quotations by both David and Saul in the whole King David narrative. Look at verse 8, slide number 5. Then David went out of the cave and he called out to Saul, my Lord the King. And just picture that. And it echoes down through the canyon. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. What a gesture. Okay? It's a supreme act of respect. David's respect for human authority was based on his respect for divine authority. And so he prostrates himself. He bows down to the ground. Again, this is in view of the guy that's been trying to take his life. And he said to Saul, verse 9, why? Have you ever asked that question? Why? Why are you doing this? Why do you listen when men say, David is bent on harming you? People are lying about me to you, Saul. This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. And these words are just echoing down through the canyon. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe. Slide number 6. He holds it up. This piece of robe in my hand, I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. And see that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I'm guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evil doers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you, Saul. And against whom has the king of Israel come out? Who are you pursuing? A dead dog? A flea? I'm not even a dead dog. I'm a single flea and dog. This is beneath you, Saul. You're wasting your time. I'm not going to fight you, and because I respect you in the position that God has put you in, and I'm a loyal subject, you have nothing to worry about in me. This is a wasted effort. Verse 15. May the Lord be our judge and decide between us. May he consider my cause and uphold it. May he vindicate me by delivering me from your hand. And so David appeals to this higher authority, and he appeals to the Lord, and he says, be our judge. May God be our judge. May he decide the dispute. May he consider his cause, the cause that I have engaged in. May he uphold it, and may he vindicate me. But I'm not going to do it. I'm not taking this prerogative in my own hands. When David finished saying this, Saul asked, is that your voice, David? My son, just hear it echoing up through the ravine. Is that your voice? David, my son? And it echoes up the ravine. What's really interesting as we read the story, Saul refuses to call him by his name. He calls him the son of Jesse, kind of with a little disdain and disrespect. And now he calls him David, my son. And formerly David was Saul's son-in-law because of the wife thing. And now he is my son. He admits his relationship to the family, and he weeps aloud. Verse 16. Verse 17, you are more righteous than I, he says, King Saul says. You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, but you did not kill me. And when a man finds his enemy, does he let him get away unharmed? May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. And I know that you will surely be king, that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. It's the first time Saul admits that. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's family. And what we realize even later, even Saul, even though he looks repentant, even later on after this, he seeks to take David's life yet again. He's going to turn on him yet again. But in his heart, he knows that David is the next king. And so David gave his oath to Saul. Of course I'm going to be kind and gracious to your family. He's already made a covenant with Jonathan, his son, Saul's son, and now he makes a covenant with Saul. And then Saul returned home. But David and his men went up to the stronghold. David refused to go home with him because he didn't trust him. You know, as I read that story, I think it begs the question, and maybe it's the question you have of yourself. What would you have done in that situation? What guidance, what GPS navigation system do you have available, do we need to guide ourselves through these opportunities? They look like opportunities, maybe they're temptations. They look like something we can get on the ladder and climb, but in reality, maybe they're a chute that we slide. Okay? What guides us through things? This is what guided David's life. Sovereignty. He had a view of God's sovereignty. If God is with me, nobody can be against me anyway. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to give this to God. It's sovereignty. Okay? You face people that maybe they have set themselves up in an antagonistic role in your life, right? A mate that promised a life partnership and they walked away, or maybe an employer made a promise and never came through. In our human depravity, we want to even the score. And David had a view of the sovereignty of God. And the sovereignty of God says, if God is with me, God's got a plan, I can trust him. I'm going to stay my hand. I'm going to give God time to work it out. I'm going to give God time to reveal whether it's opportunity or temptation, right? Sovereignty, suffering. No matter what you do, in your life, and David understood this, no matter what you do in your life, you'll be much better at it if you've gone through suffering. You'll be much better at it if you've gone through suffering. You will change. Your message will change. And so David understood that God is sovereign and that he's not going to exercise and make a decision here and take authority into his own hands, as it were. He's going to leave Saul up to God. And not only that, he's going to embrace this period of wilderness wanderings and this period of a difficult place, because he understands something. He's going to be much better at leadership if he walks through this period of suffering, if he goes through a few shoots in life. And then finally, I think David understands servanthood. He had to subordinate his personal interest to a bigger plan. And sometimes that's what we've got to do, church. Sometimes that's what we got to do. You know, Max Lucado tells about, several years ago, he tells about a Rottweiler that attacked his golden retriever puppy at a kennel. The Rottweiler climbed out of its run and into Molly's run at the kennel, and it nearly killed his puppy, his little golden retriever puppy, and the puppy was left with dozens of gashes. One of the ears was dangling. I mean, this Rottweiler tore into this thing. And Lucado said, when he found this out and he saw Molly, he said, if you would have left him and the Rottweiler in a cave that day, only one person would have come out of the cave. And so Lucado said, I settled on writing a letter instead. And he wrote a letter to the owner of the Rottweiler and encouraging them to put the dog to sleep. But when he showed the letter to the kennel owner, she pleaded with him to reconsider. She said, you know what the Rottweiler did was horrible, but you have to understand he's young too, and he's still a puppy, and I'm training, and I'm not finished with him yet. I would just encourage you to factor that into your decision. So she pleaded for Lucado to refrain from sending the letter because she wanted some time to work with the Rottweiler. And then Lucado replies, I want you to listen. God would say the same thing about the Rottweiler who attacked you. Says God. What they did was unthinkable, unacceptable, inexcusable. But I'm not finished yet. It's precisely this line of thought that moved David to handle Saul the way that he handled him. David called Saul God's anointed. I can't be the one that takes him out. It's God's prerogative. David had a healthy view of sovereignty, that God is in control of this, and I'm going to surrender to him, and he's with me. Nobody can be against me anyway. If he wants me to be king, I'll be king, but it is time. David understood suffering, that no matter what you do, you'll be much better at it when you go through a hard and difficult place. And he understood servanthood. He subordinated his personal interest in light of the bigger plan. You see, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about what grace looks like when you're facing the Rottweiler of your life. You see, you're going to be in a cave sometime. It's going to be dark. And it's going to be discouraging. And finally, self-restraint is going to reach its limitations, and you're going to reach for that dagger, and you're going to have the perfect opportunity, and you're going to look for a weak place in the armor, you're going to plunge that sucker in, because this guy, this person, this situation, he put me through so many shoots in my life. You're going to be given an opportunity to do that. And before you do, a little boy named David is growing up, learning what the real world's about. He's going to remind you. Okay? That spouse that's really did a bad deal, made it a raw deal in your life, you're going to have your opportunity to get even. David's going to sit back in the cave. He's going to whisper to you through the cave of your experience. He's going to say, sovereignty, sovereignty, sovereignty. Remember that. And he's going to whisper to you, suffering, 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 suffering. And you're going to have your dagger. And you're going to be ready. And you're going to hear him say, servanthood, servanthood, servanthood. You see, you're going to face the Rottweiler. What I'm trying to help you do today is to get the internal principles that's going to guide you when you face these situations. And you're going to face them sooner than you think you might. And I want to encourage you. I want to propose to you. I want to strongly suggest to you that there's a picture of what grace looks like in real life when we live with those three words in mind. When God is sovereign, I'm not. I can trust him with my future. When suffering is good and right, not because I'm always comfortable, but it's because of what God shows me in my place of suffering. And when servanthood is good and right, because I understand I have to set my personal agenda aside for God to work his work and to eventually put me on the ladder that he wants me on. Sovereignty, sovereignty, sovereignty. Suffering, suffering, suffering. Servanthood, servanthood, servanthood. That's what David wants you to hear. And that's what I want you to hear. And when we look at the life of David, we can see some very simple illustrations from his life that help us to live graciously when we face these kinds of situations. One of the things you see is it's in your YouVersion notes for those who are streaming online, the YouVersion, okay, on the app, on your smartphones. We've got some notes there. And if you want to live a life of grace, we're facing these kinds of cave experiences. David's going to tell you you want to practice restraint. We see this in verse 7. He practices restraint. Everything looks like opportunity. He discerns it as temptation. He backs off of it. He practices restraint. He holds back his desire to get even in the cave when all of his men say, you need to do this, David. So I'm going to encourage, if you want to live with grace when you're surrounded by King Sauls of life, we all must learn to practice restraint. Because sometimes you're going to want to say it, and it's not going to be the right time to say it. You're going to want to punch somebody or strangle somebody, it's not going to be the right time to punch or strangle. You're going to want that so bad. And David is going to tell you, what? Sovereignty, suffering, servanthood. He's going to tell you, restrain. Live a grace-filled life. Practice restraint. Something else he's going to tell you, show appropriate respect. Can you imagine this? The guy that's done all these things to David, and David bows down in front of him because of who he is and what he represents. Do you have a trouble showing respect, maybe to your mama or your daddy? Do you have a trouble showing respect to a teacher or coach? Do you have trouble showing respect to a police officer? You know, sometimes we struggle with authority. I came across this week. A police officer is many things. Okay? And by the way, who are you going to call when somebody's trying to take your life out? Somebody's trying to pull a King Saul and they're literally trying to take your life. Who are you going to call? It's a police officer. Okay? That's the way we're set up. That's not the way they were set up in this particular time. Things were a little different. Think about a police officer. You think about they're on the edge of this thing. They're on the edge of this respect thing. And a police officer is a son, he's a brother, he's a father, an uncle, an aunt, okay? Sometimes they're even a grandfather, a grandmother, a grandfather. A police officer is a protector in time of need, a comforter in time of sorrow. His job calls for him to be a diplomat, a psychologist, a lawyer, a friend, an inspiration. He suffers from an overdose of publicity about brutality and dishonesty. And too often acts of heroism go unnoticed, and the truth is buried under all the criticism. And the fact is that less than 0.5% of policemen ever discredit their uniform. That's a better average than you'll find among clergymen. And so a policeman is an ordinary guy who is called upon for extraordinary bravery for us. His job may sometimes seem routine, but the interruptions can be moments of really stark terror. And if you ever talk to anybody who's a police officer, they'll tell you how quickly that can turn. He's the man who faces a half-crazed gunman, who rescues a lost child, who challenges a mob, who risks his neck more than we often realize. He deserves our respect and profound thanks. And a policeman stands between the law abider and the lawbreaker. And the prime reason your home hasn't been burned, your family abused, or a business looted is because of one primary reason. You had a policeman. And you want to show grace in your life. And I know I'm a bully pulpit right here, okay? Hobby horse. Okay? But part of showing grace is you practice restraint, yes, but secondly, you show respect. You show respect. And I am uncomfortable when people use derogatory names to refer to policemen. It bothers me. And we do it a lot. People can do that a lot. I have very high respect, and I was taught that from an early age. And just saying, if you're going to live the life God wants you to live, if you're going to know how to live with grace when you face the King Sauls of life, you're going to have to practice restraint. You're going to have to show appropriate respect, and how you treat people in your life in positions of authority are going to be an indicator of how you're going to do when you're faced. You know what? If somebody can't show respect to a police officer, I'm not so sure I want to be and God seems to be lying to others while shooting.
And like David and Annie, we ask, why are you doing this? See, David's father never thought much of David. Shoot and slide. Otherwise, he'd have had him in the lineup of 8 sons.
David's brothers despised him. Shoot and slide. His king was obsessed with murdering him. Shoot and slide. Samuel believed in David. Climb. Goliath was no match for him. Climb, baby. Jonathan befriended him. Climb. God was with him. Climb. And what we've learned here from the life of David is that life is like a chutes and ladder game. There's highs and lows, and simultaneously will come. And when you are in that position in your life when the cave is dark and it doesn't look very hopeful, I want you to hear this boy, David, who's been through the game of chutes and ladders many times over. And he's going to be whispering something to you in the cave. What's he going to whisper? Sovereignty, sovereignty, sovereignty. God's with me, no man be against me. Right? Sovereignty, sovereignty, sovereignty. What else is he going to whisper to you in the cave? Suffering, suffering, suffering. You'll be much better at whatever it is you do if you go through some hard places. It changes you. What else is he going to whisper? Servanthood, servanthood, servanthood. You set your agenda aside. God, I want your plan, not my plan. How will you respond today? How will you respond? You in a game of chutes and ladders? You know what the gospel says? The gospel says that, humanity was in a place where we were trying to ladder ourselves to God. Climb that ladder. What the gospel says? Jesus got on the ladder and he came down for you and for me.
And you can't make it without me.
And you can't even climb up. You don't have the strength to climb up to me. I'm coming down. And I'll take you where you need to be. Do you need him this morning? You need him? Okay. Where are you at? How are you feeling? What's the priorities that guide you? Are you looking at an opportunity? Are you giving God a chance to tell you what that is? Or are you looking at a temptation? Are you thinking about going down that path? Okay? Where are you at this morning? As I was thinking about my closing last evening, an opportunity focuses on the long cut. Temptation focuses on the shortcut. An opportunity it's a slower decision. A temptation is a quick decision. An opportunity is a step closer to the ultimate goal, what God's got in mind for you. A temptation is a step forward from the true purpose. An opportunity is hard work many times. A temptation is easy street. An opportunity requires persistence. A temptation requires just consent. An opportunity focuses on a guilt-free life. A temptation focuses on a guilt-ridden life. You need Jesus. I need him. You facing a Rottweiler? Put you in a cave with whatever that person is or whatever that thing is, and only one person is going to come out alive? Sovereignty. Okay? Sovereignty. Servanthood. Suffering. Will you pray with me? Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this great group. They've listened so well, and I just know that they're going to face these King Saul experiences in their life. And I know they want to align with David and live a life of grace, and we've given them some pointers for that today. But when push comes to shove and the dagger's in our hand and the opportunity's before us, man, it tastes so sweet. It's going to taste what we think is so sweet. It's going to be so good to plunge that thing in because it's finally the chance I've always wanted. And maybe in that moment, we would give pause and we would reflect. Wait a second. I have a God to glorify, and he's sovereign. I have a plan, and this may not be working out the way I think it should, but I'm going to surrender my plan. I'm going to be a servant. I'm going to surrender my plan to God's plan. And furthermore, even though I've been through a lot of painful places, you, God, have taught me, and you've grown me, and you've positioned me and conditioned me to live the kind of life that you want me to live. And so I'm going to trust that to you, and we do that this day in your name and for your glory. Amen. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. Make his face shine upon you. He has called you by your name. You are his. Now go. Go. Enjoy that Super Bowl party. Enjoy those brownies. Enjoy that touchdown taco dip. Put it away for the glory of God. Have a great day.